be dispensed with?
Without objection.
Mr. President, I have two requests for committees to meet during today's session of the Senate. They have the approval of the majority and minority leaders.
Duly noted.
Mr. President, tomorrow, January 27th, is the 77th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz, which is located in German-occupied Poland. January 27th has been designated by the United Nations as Holocaust Remembrance Day. Auschwitz-Birkenau was the most notorious of the atrocities that were committed during World War II in concentration, labor, and death camps run by the Nazis in Germany during World War II. 6 million Jews were murdered during World War II. 5 million others, Romas, Afro-Germans, gay men and women, people with disabilities, and others that were just disliked by the Nazi regime. 11 million people perished as a result of these atrocities. Our responsibility? To remember, never forget what happened during World War II, what was committed, and to do everything in our power to make sure that these types of atrocities never happen again. We owe that to support the survivors so that their heroism is not forgotten. And we need to support Holocaust education. I want to thank my colleagues. In the appropriation process, we have made funds available to help the survivors of the Holocaust and to provide for Holocaust education. Never again is what we need to achieve. We have not achieved it to date. We can look back at the atrocities committed in Rwanda, or we could take a look at what's happening today with the Uyghurs, or with the Rohingyas, or with the Yazidis. We see atrocities being committed around the world. Or what's happening in Ukraine, perpetrated by Russia. The atrocities and war crimes that are being committed by the Russians. So, Mr. President, on this day of remembrance, it's important for us to understand where we are and to take steps to protect us against atrocities. I serve on the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum Board as a Senate representative. That's an institution that is dedicated to compiling the information about the Holocaust, making it available through education and other opportunities for people to understand what happened, and to have a mission to prevent atrocities in the future. I also serve as the Senate chair of the U.S. Helsinki Commission. The U.S. Helsinki Commission is best known for its commitment to advance human rights globally. I'm proud of the work that we have done in Holocaust education and fighting the rise of anti-Semitism. And Mr. President, I also serve as the special representative of the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe's Parliamentary Assembly on anti-Semitism, racism, and intolerance. I mention all of that because I want to share with you the concerns, the warning bells that have gone off, the rise of hate in our own community and around the world that should be a concern to all of us. 2021 was the highest number of instances of anti-Semitism in the United States in its history. We broke the record in 2021. According to the ADL, there was a 60% increase in 2021 over 2020 in anti-Semitic activities. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security has issued a warning about the heightened potential for violent domestic attacks. These anti-Semitic activities are deadly. I need not remind us all of the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh in 2018, where 11 people were murdered with an anti-Semitic activity. 25% of the Jews that live in America fear from violence caused by anti-Semitism. Mr. President, I've had a chance to visit a lot of countries as a member of the United States Senate, as a member of the House, former member of the House. I try to visit synagogues when I travel abroad. And it was understood that there would be security in front of the synagogue buildings when I attended the services. But I always felt comfortable in the United States that that would not be necessary. It is now necessary for synagogues to have security here in the United States, and mosques in other areas that are vulnerable to violence caused by hate. We are also at risk today of our own democratic institutions. Anti-Semitism and hate is fueled by conspiracy theories. The replacement theory, which is based upon the old age anti-Semitic trope. That leads directly to violence. It's also a threat on our democratic institutions. Conspiracy theories about election deniers led up to the January 6th attack on this sacred building. We fight for the peaceful. We believe in the peaceful transfer of power. And we saw violence trying to prevent the peaceful transfer of power, which is critically important to our democratic institutions. Mr. Putin's campaign, in part, is based upon anti-Semitism. He says he wants to denazify Ukraine. Ukraine has a Jewish president, I would like to remind my colleagues. We all have a responsibility to fight anti-Semitism and any form of hate in our community. In 2004, I participated in the Berlin Conference, which was the first major international conference in recent times to coordinate strategies to fight anti-Semitism. What came out of that conference was that leaders have a responsibility to lead. Our words mean something. When there is violence in our community, we need to speak out against it. If any minority group is unsafe, we're all unsafe. We need to form coalitions to fight all forms of intolerance in our community. On November 29th of last year, I convened a roundtable discussion. I want to thank Senator Rosen and Senator Blumenthal for joining me, and Congressman Vesey from the House of Representatives. We brought together representatives from the Department of Homeland Security, Department of Justice, the White House, from the Department of State. We had representatives of the Anti-Defamation League, the American Jewish Committee. And I want to compliment the second gentleman, Doug Emhoff, for holding a similar discussion in the White House. What came out of those discussions is that we need a whole-of-government approach in order to stop the tide, the rise of hate and violence in our community. So I was so pleased that President Biden on December 12th established an interagency group led by the Domestic Policy Council to increase and better coordinate U.S. government efforts to counter anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and related forms of fear and discrimination. We need a coordinated strategy. We all need to be part of that coordinated strategy. This is not a one day a year. It's every day, 365 days a year. We all need to be engaged. We all have a responsibility to join together in a coordinated strategy. So never again means never again. So on this day of remembrance, as we acknowledge the liberation of the Auschwitz death camps, let us also rededicate ourselves to do everything in our power so it really can say never again. With that, Mr. President, I would suggest the absence of quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Baldwin.